Hi, it's Cory, and today our music theory for ukulele lesson is all about chord qualities. What's a chord quality? It's actually something you interact with all the time for ukulele. Chord qualities are the way in which the pitches relate to one another inside a chord. And the way that you actually identify the quality is by the word next to the chord name. So take a C chord, for instance. I can't just say it's a C chord because there are actually a lot of different types of C chords. This chord is probably what people are most familiar with when I say C chord. And this is the C major chord. But it just being called a C chord doesn't really give you that much information. That's why the quality is really important. The quality tells us what type of C chord that is. Now, this one, for instance, that's C minor. So the quality of that particular chord is minor. But there are actually a lot of other ones too, and we're gonna talk about some of them today. So in general, while there are more than this, for ukulele, you really only interact with 4 different types of chord qualities. Major and minor, which are the most common, and then augmented and diminished. Now, when it comes to the different ways you can actually identify chord qualities, there's a few different ways people use to be able to know what the quality is. Of course, there's just saying the full name, like C major, for instance. You know that's going to be a major chord, but sometimes you're not saying the chord. Sometimes there are other symbols by it. So let's go over what a few of those symbols are. For major, you can use either an uppercase M next to the chord name. So take C major, for instance. You could have, of course, just saying C major, or you could have uppercase C with an uppercase M. You could also have just the uppercase C. That's totally fine too. Or you could also sometimes use a triangle. This isn't something I see a lot of times and often is reserved for some jazz stuff, but for ukulele, it'll pop up once in a while. C minor, whether it's an uppercase or lowercase m when it's the entire word minor, it doesn't really matter. But if you're just going to use an M to represent minor, it does need to be lowercase. So you'll see a lot of times an uppercase letter with a lowercase m. That is indicating that it is a minor chord. You might also see a lowercase m with a line above it. That also indicates a minor chord. And then also, if you just see a lowercase letter, so if you had C, for instance, the uppercase version of C on its own would be for major, and the lowercase version for C on its own would be for minor. But that's not quite as common just because sometimes, especially with beginner players, they might get it confused. You can also, next to a chord, have a little like dash or a little minus symbol that also indicates that it is a minor chord. But again, similar to the triangle for major, that's more common with jazz music. Now, when we get into augmented chords, there are a few less options. The really important ones, though, that you just need to remember for ways to indicate an augmented chord is you'll see the letter name uppercase with a plus next to it, or you'll just see AUG as abbreviation for augmented. And then for diminished, it's very similar, except for rather than a plus next to the chord name, you will see a little circle, kind of like a degree symbol next to the letter, or you'll just see DIM for diminished. Now, once you kind of know how to identify the different chords, so if you see it and you see a chord chart, you know like how to actually just say the chord name and its quality, it's also really important to know like why is that happening? And that's all because of the way that the pitches within the chord interact with one another. I'm just going to give you the formula in order to actually create that chord so you can identify it when you see it and you know how to build it if you're trying to create that chord. So for C major, we're starting with that root of C, and then we're going to go up a major third distance. A major third is the interval that we use to describe 4 half steps of difference. So to start, and remember when you're thinking of these half steps, you need to think chromatic scale because you can't just skip around between the different pitch names. You have to think chromatically because you're going up a half step each. So for C major, the distance between C and D are 2 half steps. So we have C to D. Then the next letter is going to be E. The distance between D and E is another 2 half steps. So we have to add those other 2 half steps. So in total, we have 4 half steps from the distance of C to E, which is perfect because we know we have to have our major third there, and a major third equals 4 half steps. In the C major, after we go a major third up from our root, we take that new pitch, in this case E, and we need to go up a minor third from here. A minor third equals 3 half steps. So again, the major third equals 4 half steps, the minor third equals 3 half steps. So going up from E, let's figure out what that new pitch is going to be, moving up 3 half steps. E to F is going to be our first half step there because it's just a half step between those 2. Then we need 2 more half steps. So we're on F and we need to get to G for the next one. So that's going to be 2 half steps. So that's our 3 total half steps. So again, we go from E to F, F to F sharp to G, getting to that E to G. So our total pitch collection for a C major chord equals C, E, G. For C minor, it's going to work in a similar way, except for you're going to mix up the formula. So starting on the root, you go up a minor third this time, and then you're gonna stack on top of that another major third. So for major, you're starting with the major, and then you go to minor. For minor chords, you start with a minor interval, and then you go and stack with a major. So let's break it down of what those pitches will be. Starting with the C chord, to go up a minor third, we're no longer going to have just E. We actually need an E flat because it was 4 half steps to get to that E. If we take away one of those half steps, we're left with E flat. So C to E flat equals our minor third. Now from E flat, we need to stack on our major third on top of that, which is going to be 4 half steps. What's really nice is because you're just inverting these 2 little intervals, the math ends up being really easy. So we are still going to be ending up on that G. So the only thing you really needed to change from a C major to a C minor is making that E flat. Now the trick with augmented chords is you are actually stacking a major third and then a major third starting from the root. So we have our C. Now, rather than going those 3 half steps up, we're actually going to be going 4 because we need a major third on top of that. So we're going back to C up to E because that's our half step of 4. We know 3 half steps got us up to G, but we need 1 more. So we're gonna actually end up on G sharp. And lastly, let's take a look at the C diminished chord. So while the augmented chord stacked 2 major thirds on top of each other, the diminished chord is going to stack 2 minor thirds on top of each other, starting with the root. So we're going back to that E flat from the C. So that's gonna get us our first minor. And then in order to get to the G, we actually have to do G flat rather than the regular G. And that's going to get us with both of those minor thirds. So to start, we have like the C to D flat here, or C sharp, same thing enharmonically, but we're working in flats for the key that we need in this particular one. Then we have to move to E, then moving E flat, so that's the first one. Then we need E flat to E, to F, and then to the G flat here. So you can see we had those 3 half steps again, and that creates our C diminished chord. Overall though, that's the basics that you need to know as far as chord qualities go for ukulele. In our next lesson, we're gonna be talking about intervals, and I know that's something we kind of started talking about in this lesson, but we're really gonna deep dive in it and really understand what all those different intervals are, why they sometimes appear in the chord name, and how we can use them to help build our chords, but also help us get better at singing and also how to understand picking better too. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a like, or if you have any specific questions, make sure to comment down below. I will also be doing live stream lessons every other Friday for this. So if you're watching this and the live stream has already happened, I'll make sure to link the live stream in the description so you can check it out in case people ask great questions. I also just go into things a lot more thoroughly. That way, you know, it's an open thing where I can interact with you guys a lot better. So if you want to check that out, feel free. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye.